Corruption, greed, and an attitude of entitlement. That's the picture prosecutors are trying to paint of former Congresswoman Corrine Brown.
The defense, however, contends that she's a victim, betrayed by her former chief of staff. The lawyers on both sides delivered their opening statements in her federal corruption trial just hours after a jury was seated. We first told you about it in a push alert sent out just after 10 this morning. Channel 4's Jim Piggott is focusing on the opening statements, and a local attorney is standing by with his analysis. But we begin with Joy at the federal courthouse with a look at the makeup of the jury who will decide Brown's fate. Joy.
Yes, Mary, Tom, as you know, it took 2.5 days to seat this jury. Here is their makeup. 3 white females, 2 black females, 5 white males, 1 black male, 1 Hispanic male. Very interesting mix of people there. A reminder that cameras are not allowed inside federal court, but our cameras were here just minutes, well, I should say about an hour ago when trial ended for the day. Corrine Brown walking out with some of her supporters. That Spitfire personality we're used to seeing, not here today. She was very quiet, very calm, very almost downtrodden. It was just interesting to see her as she walked over to her car, got in, she drove herself here, she left in her white Lexus. Our cameras also here this morning when she arrived with a larger group of her supporters. They prayed right outside the courthouse before they went inside. Once again, the same demeanor. We saw Corrine Brown standing quietly as they prayed for her before going into court. Once the jury was seated this morning, opening statements began. Jim Piggott, among our group, among our team that has been inside the courtroom all day long. Jim is joining us now on the other side of the federal courthouse. And Jim, prosecutors started first and they said, hey, jury, we are so sorry we have to tell you something bad about a woman who has served our country for nearly a quarter of a century, reelected time and time again, but there is a darker side to her, they said.
And that's what they pointed out. In fact, Joy, one thing that they said that when they first started investigating this, they couldn't believe what they were finding. But they said it did happen. Well, Brown's attorney's basically saying that it was her chief of staff that did all of this, Ronnie Simmons, and that she knew nothing about it. Both sides laid out a different image of Corrine Brown. The federal prosecutor described her as a crook, someone who knew she was taking money from a sham charity, while Brown's attorney described her as a woman getting older and putting trust in others, and they committed the fraud that benefited them behind her back. In opening statements, lead attorney Tyson Duva told jurors that the deceit by former Congresswoman Brown began even before the one-door charity fraud surfaced. Through the years since 2010, he said Brown was able to pocket over $141,000. Duva described her role in Congress and then her rise in power. He talked about her slogan, Corrine Delivers, and then said there was another side of corruption, lying, greed, cheating, and stealing. Many of Duva's remarks centered on the one door for education and describing how Brown and her staff would siphon off the money from the charity starting in 2012. They talked about her second in command, Ronnie Simmons, and how he will testify because of a plea agreement about his role with Brown and how they worked on this together. Prosecutors are also calling witnesses who said they wrote checks to the charity because Brown asked them to do that, and they had no idea that the money wasn't going to scholarships, but to Brown's own pocket. Brown's attorney, James Smith, pointed to a different woman. He said the former Congresswoman relied on her staff and Ronnie Simmons to run her personal affairs while she attended to Congress. Smith said there were 2 things that need to be asked about Ronnie Simmons: who he is and why he can't be trusted. Smith says Brown thought things were running smoothly and placed her absolute trust in Simmons and treated him and referred to him as a son. And that's what's happening right now in testimony with the FBI, who are going to pick this up tomorrow morning, talking about those transactions. But one person that will testify tomorrow will be Susie Wiles. She's a local political consultant, well known in this community, and actually led President Donald Trump's campaign here in Florida. She'll be taking the stand sometime tomorrow. Joy?
Jim, thank you so much. Randy Reep is joining us once again, a local attorney not affiliated with this case, but able to give us some great insight. We talked a little bit earlier about the prosecution's side. Let's talk real quickly about the defense. They are saying that all of this is Ronnie Simmons' fault. This is a quote from their opening statement. Corrine Brown was well into her mid-60s with no husband, no companion. She only had Ronnie Simmons. She delegated personal and professional affairs to him. But you told me you wouldn't have come at it like that.
I think it's a dangerous play to say that it's somebody else's fault when you're a representative of your constituents, that you're saying, hey, I don't have the power to control what occurred here. They're gonna not like Simmons, the jury, I mean, and she's actually thrown herself in the lot with him. I think it's a dangerous bedfellow to make there, if you will.
Also, something interesting that you and I talked about off camera, the money. We're not just talking about money that was funneled or supposedly funneled through One Door for Education, that charity. There are other things that she's going to have to explain as well in court.
Well, the prosecution laid it out pretty clear. There are 5 sources of income. There's the Alexander Agency, CRC, a local issue. One Door is the one we use as shorthand. However, people, and particularly in the jury, are going to be very offended to realize she was not only stealing, from the donations, but as taxpayers. The tax fraud that's alleged is going to be a very, very big mountain for her to climb.
All right, Randy Reep, thank you so much. We appreciate it. I know you'll be with us again tomorrow as we continue our coverage. 9 a.m. is when court is back in session. And coming up tonight on the 10 o'clock news, if you missed any of our coverage all day long about this story, we will have a complete wrap-up for you as well as a look ahead. For now, we're live outside the federal courthouse. Tom, Mary?